Alright, what's up guys? This is bluetea-TCG coming at you with a deck profile video, this time featuring one of my friends, Fox. He's going to be showing us today a Nightmare Doll deck profile for Premium. This is the deck he brought to Spring Fest 2022 today. Actually, we are still at the venue right now, so needing to film this live while we're still at the venue is probably the best part about what we're about to do here. But for now, I'll just let Fox to take it away.
Alright, yeah, so this was my first actual Vanguard tourney. Our team went 3-3. Individually, I went 5-1 pretty well. The matchups were Kagero round 1, Narukami round 2, round 3 Luard, round 4 was Abai, round 5 was Ezel, and round 6 was Narukami again. So to start off, classic V starter. Your Nightmare Doll deck needs a lot of draw power. This is just an extra draw. Reason why is that Carol discards 2. So off of the XL, getting the +1 and discard 2, and then drive check 2. The entire time you're only getting +1, you're just really cycling through your deck. And a lot of the time you'll have certain defensive cards or combo pieces you really want to keep, but you have to discard off of Carol. So that's why you run this, just to have the extra card as fodder to throw off. That also explains some of the G deck and why you do certain plays later. So that's the starter. In terms of trigger, pretty self-explanatory. 3 of the Heal Guardians, prevents grade 2 rush. Pitch for cost, you get your G Guardians, plus 10k, -1 crit. It's also a grade 3 Workroid, which synergizes really well with Abigail, who is a grade 1 that can get this back in your hand if you do soul charge it. I'll get more to her later. But this card is very good just because it's in the archetype. So rarely you do sometimes add it if you don't think you have kill turn. You can add this back to hand and play it defensively. We also then run 4 crits of the GB1 standard one. When Vanguard attacks, put in a soul, plus 10k, draw a card. Also to help mitigate the draw problem as well as give certain boosters, because if they hit a trigger early on, that can really stop your combos unless you also get some of your own triggers of your own, or if you don't have this plus 10k to beat over. Next is 3 stride fodder crits. Honestly, I was debating if I want to switch this out for another one, because I do feel that sometimes you have to pitch your grade 3s for stride, which you don't always want to do if you don't have multiple of them for combo pieces. And this rarely came up as often, I felt like. But for now, these were fine, although I am thinking about running the 4th one. And yeah, same thing, 4 draw PGs. You don't really have a lot of room in the grade 1 lineup or the grade 2 lineup just because of the grade 3s you run. This is also just another defensive card, more draw, extra power, all that. And then of course the 1 over trigger, the plus a million, remove, draw card, and plus 10k plus crit on Vanguard for the rest of the game until it's over. It is only on your turn, so yeah, just 4 heal, 7 crit, 4 draw, 1 over trigger. I think these are pretty standard ratios for Nightmare Dolls. There's not really anything you would change for it. If you want and you don't like the crit, you could run some stands. You can run some front triggers instead. But I do think that the 3 stride fodder crit are probably non-negotiable, just because otherwise you'll be pitching too often your combo pieces for cost. For grade 1 lineup, we run 4 of the Abigails. This is one of the best cards in the deck. It is also your best ride target for grade 1. The ride targets aren't very good in this deck, but you get a soul charge 1 when placed, so sometimes that just gets you a combo piece for free, so then you don't have to worry about trying to put it into soul off of another skill. And at the end of a turn, you can retire it. You can bounce a grade 3 Workroid back to hand from soul, which is why you can add back the heal trigger since it's in the Workroid family, or you can add back your combo pieces. And then since all your Vanguards are going to be Workroids, you get a counter charge for 1 for free.
Yeah, by the way, can you flip it over so that the viewers can see what the cards kind of look like? Yeah, there we go. Perfect. And yeah, thanks for explaining in detail the logic of the grade 1. I definitely have seen that grade 1 be very effective, so yeah. All right.
And then yeah, just standard trigger lineup, so
yeah, you're on the trigger.
Not much to
triggers,
talk about.
Yeah, the triggers. Just once we start getting to the grade 1s and such, then we'll need to start seeing their effects. But yeah, you're good.
All right, the other grade 1 I run is Leslie. The main way that this deck does restands and attacks is through Leslie. She isn't very threatening by herself to 7k, but her rearguard effect is whenever a Nightmare Doll Alice gets put into Soul, she restands. So basically there's a whole loop that I'll go over quickly in depth, but she is a core combo piece. And generally you use her as a booster, and if you get power, you put the power to her because she stays on field, and she just becomes a constant 7k, 17k, 27k booster on and on. I did actually draw the Oba trigger in game today in my round 5 game. It killed them before it mattered, but if you ever do, you put the plus 1,000,000 on your Leslie, and then if you have the Alice, you can do a loop with the constant 1 million booster, which is really insane.
Oba triggers are fair and balanced.
Yes, one day they'll be banned, but for now they will not. Next is the 4 rocks. This is, I think, pretty standard nowadays in the Nightmare Dolls lists, and a lot of other decks are running a few of these. So when placed on Guardian Zone, if you're at a grade 2 or lower Vanguard, it counts as a PG without having to discard a card. Honestly, you could try to cut these down to maybe like 3 and try to find a flex spot, but personally, I didn't really see anything that was really super worth running, so I just kept this here. And then for grade 2 lineup, this card is, I think, a non-negotiable 4 of. So Marissa, when placed from hand on Vanguard or Rearguard, you pitch a card into Soul, check top 7, you get to add 2 non-grade 2 Workeroids to your hand that are normal units. So you can't add the heal trigger, but you can add any of your grade 1s or any of your grade 3s to get your combo pieces going, and this just helps thin the deck out while it's still being a 9k, and you can intercept if you do call it from Rearguard. Unfortunately, soul charging this really sucks because you don't get it because you can't place it from the rearguard to get its effect. But usually it makes a good target then to burn for a soul blast because you can't use it afterwards. And also this card, you usually actually want a hard mulligan for this. Like, there's a lot of times where I'll draw an Abigail like a Leslie, and if I don't like the rest of my hand, or if I think the rest of the hand is like okay, I'll mulligan all 4 of the rest of the cards just to try to get this card at least. Because this card really increases your consistency of winning the game and getting your core carols out. Afterwards, we run the 2 Elin. This definitely feels like the weakest card in the deck personally to me. Its effect is after you, when you attack from rearguard, you can counterblast 1, put a rearguard that's a Workeroid from rearguard to soul, plus 10k draw card. This didn't really come up often, but this is situationally helpful in certain matchups where they might want to bind cards or they might want to retire units, such as the Kagero and the 2 Narukami players that I play against. This did come up actually in the last Narukami game where I used the effect just to put something back into soul so it couldn't be targeted by their Denial Griffin plays. And then I was able to later call it out because of other effects and keep it up. But usually this card, I think you could cut this for something else, but I just don't think there's anything that's really super good. Only other card I would consider maybe is Jumping Jill. But the problem then is that she's not a Nightmare Doll, and some of your effects rely on that, although it's mainly Workeroid. So sometimes you can't use this effectively. And then the other 4 cards you run for grade 2. So we run, of course, the 16 triggers, 12 grade 1s, and 10 grade 2s. It's the 4 Ginny. Honestly, you only need to see 1 of these cards per game. Because you just put this into Soul for cost for Marissa, or you just save it in hand if you have an Alice in Soul, and you can then Superior call the Alice out on a rearguard circle. So what she does is when you place her on rearguard, you can put her into Soul for cost and call an Alice from Soul to rearguard. It gets plus 5k. This is what you mainly use to create the loop, and generally this is what you can put into Soul for cost if you don't really have the Alice. If you have the Alice on grade 2, you can just call this, and then you have your 17k beater of an Alice with whatever 9k grade 2 you have, and that's really hard to deal with on their own grade 2 turn, or even in their own grade 3 turn if you do happen to go second. And then grade 3 lineup, grade 1, 3 Chelsea. So for this, card, it makes more sense to explain with Carol, which I'll get to, but her Vanguard ability comes at situationally. After end of battle, counterblast 1, call 2 Workroids to rearguard from Soul, and they get plus 10k to end of turn. Usually, if you are going to go into this, you do it as one of your last rewrites, and then you use its effect to get 2 more beaters out and then swing again. Its more important effect, it's its rearguard effect, is after the battle it swings, if you have a Workroid Vanguard, you can put this unit into Soul and one of your opponent's unit into Soul. So this is a way to deal with Honolulu, which is very effective. And it's also deal with any other type of cards that are going to try to stop you from playing the game or stop your multi-attacks.
How often did Honolulu come up today?
So it actually didn't come up at all today. The only time this card was super important was when I was playing against the Narukami player and I had to put something of theirs into Soul early on so they couldn't use it for later. That was about it. For the most part, I actually didn't put anything into Soul. I only put itself into Soul, just like it triggered Carol's effect. And we'll get to Carol's effect, but this is your best target to trigger Carol's effect because it's a free put into Soul and you don't have to trigger a counterblast. So I'll explain it when I get to Carol real quick. Afterwards, we run 4 Alice. Pretty standard. This is like your main combo, of course. Vanguard skill is not that good when placed on Vanguard. Call up a Workroid from Soul, plus 5k to rearguard. It's okay. It's not really super great, but sometimes you're forced to ride it just to get the XL marker, draw, and get another unit on board before you go stride. The important effect is the rearguard effect. After the battle, counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, put in Soul, call it on grade 2. So I'll go over the combo in a bit with this, since that's the main combo. And then the last is 4 Carol. You have to run 4 Carol. Carol is an insane card. She is your best Vanguard target. When placed, you get the XL, you check top 5, you put 1 card into Soul, which is a mandatory cost. But if it's a grade 3 Workroid, you can call it to an open rearguard if you so choose. So there's a lot of times you'll use this effect. You'll get an Alice, and you can just keep it in Soul if you have a Ginny to call it, or you can call it out if you want, if you already have some Leslie's on board. Or you can call out a Chelsea, and now you have another Chelsea that's going to proc Carol's second effect. And Carol's second effect is what makes this really good, is that when a grade 3 rearguard gets put into Soul, counterblast 1, discard 2, you can then rewrite a Workroid and give it -1 drive. So like, let's say you have like this, right? Like these 2 Carols as your Soul. You swing with this, you get your 2 drive check. You swing with this, goes into Soul, triggers Carol effect, counterblast 1, discard, and then you have all your options of rewriting into whatever you have in your Soul. Depending if you have counterblast, you go back into Carol. It's not once per turn. XL, top 5, again and again, you keep looping it. The only problem I think with this combo is that it's not very good in terms of hand size. Like, you only get really +1 because XL +1. When placed, you might get a good +1 to Soul, you might not. And then when you swing, +2, +3, discard, that's -2 back to +1. Rewrite grade 3, +1, +2, drive check, +3, -2 for cost, +1. So you only see +1 the entire time, but you are cycling through your deck very quickly. So that's like the main image of the deck. It's mainly to get out Carol as fast as possible, and then afterwards just keep rewriting with it to get those XL marker spams. And then the other thing that's very useful for this is that you can write down to grade 2 off of this, which is what makes the deck insanely broken. So that's why we run the rocks, is because you have a way to go down from Carol, can write down to grade 2 off of Chelsea's effect or Alice's effect. Because Alice still puts herself into Soul, which triggers Carol. But the problem though is that you have to counterblast 1 for Alice and counterblast 1 for Carol, so it's really expensive. So ideally, you want to get it off of Chelsea because you save a counterblast. And then you can end your turn with your Marissa. You can have your rocks in hand, pass turn. Especially if you go first, since you went down from 3 to 2, you still had a grade 3 rush turn.
Oh, Richard.
While they're on their grade 2. And even if they ride up to grade 3. Since you have the rocks, they can't stride and all that. And so now let's go over quickly the core loop that you'll be running. You'll be running your Alice, your Ginny, and your Leslie. So the general consensus or general thing you want to do is usually I like making a column. So you swing with your column, end the battle, you Soul Blast 1, Counter Blast 1. This goes into Soul. You call out Ginny. This restands because Alice is put into Soul. Trigger Ginny's effect. Bring it back out, +5. This is now swinging for a 24 attack with the first one being 19. So 19 gets over your 13k Vanguards, but they still have to block 10k. And even if they hit a defensive trigger off of that, taking the first one, you're still swinging for 24, so they have to block at least 5. And then if you have even like more Leslies on board, you just keep all restanding, boosting, and you get a whole ton of crazy amount of attacks. This is basically how you win games, is with this combo right here, if you have enough counterblast to go into it. So that's the core deck game plan. One thing that's also very important to note is that, let's say you're boosting with your Abigail in the back, or boosting with really anything in the back, right? Like sometimes you can boost with your Leslie too in the back, behind Vanguard. Like either of these are very strong. I obviously say it's this one, just because if you have an Alice, you can restand this too. But you know, same thing with this is gonna cost a lot of counterblast. So if you're swinging like this, and you have a way to restand or re-ride from Soul, you actually just want to swing with this for the first attack. Reason why is that if you're a grade 3, outside of, you know, Force clans, they're gonna have to take it, and then afterwards, if they take it or they don't take it, re-ride. Let's say you ride down into your Marissa or whatever grade 2 you have. Let's just say this one. Now, since you have no check, normally you wouldn't be able to hit, but because you saved your booster, you swing for 17. So even if they check the defensive trigger, you're still swinging for 17. They still might get hit, but they still have to respect it at least. So let's go into the G zone now. So we run 2 Darklord Princess, 2 Yvette, and 4 Hari. I'm doing these together, but I'll explain each card separately. This is your Darklord Princess package or your Magia package. We do run Dust in the deck, which is why we mainly run this. So for Darklord Princess,
around so
yes.
that the viewers can see.
So I'll start with Darklord Princess. So for Darklord Princess, you swing, and then after the battle, you can call it to an open rear guard, or call it over something. Let me make sure it's open rear guard. I think it's just rear guard. Yeah, I just call this card a rear guard. You can then pick a Magia Stride, which is your Hari or your Yvette, and you can place it on the Vanguard circle, and then this gets -2, 1 drive. Yeah, -2 drives to 1 drive. And then this card, when it swings, during attack, you put a card into Soul, you get an Exile draw, and then you call a card from it, gets +15k, and it goes back into Soul at the end of turn. So this card is actually, and then also you flip something for cost. So usually you flip Harry. What this does is it gives you 1, 2, 3. So this gives you your 3 GB already. So then you are able to go into Dust, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then Hari, when it attacks, you can counterblast 1, put 2 units from rear guard to Soul, Persona flip, and then call 3 out, and those get nothing else. Yes. Since we don't run any Magia rear guards, really. And then you can put those 3 back into Soul at the end of the turn. So usually off of Hari or your Vet skill, you would call it a combo piece you need that you want to protect and put it back into Soul at the end of turn against the Narukami, Link Joker matchup, Kagero matchup. You can also call it Abigail's off of the skill, since Abigail retires herself before she has to go put back into Soul. So you can retire Abigail, get your counter charge, get your grade 3s back, and then resolve Hari or Yvette's skill to put whatever possibly you had back into the Soul. Hari is generally not what you want to go into off of Dark Lord Princess, just because he does use a counterblast, and that's better used for the Alice combo. But it is an option since sometimes you do need to get attacks out while putting them back into Soul, just so that you don't have them like, you know, Narukami or something bind your entire like field, and then all of a sudden they're getting plus a billion attack, and they're drawing off like 2 or 3 cards off of it. So then afterwards, and then same thing with Dark Lord Princess and Yvette. If you're boosting, you swing with just this. It'd be 27 with the Vanguard. That means they have to block at least 15 for 1 to pass, but you have 3 check. And then since you're going to rerun into this, since you only have 1 check, if they do pull that defensive trigger, you're swinging with a booster, which makes them still have to commit at least another 15k blocker from hand. Because if they're 13 plus 10 is 23, 15 plus 12 is 27, plus lowest booster of 7, 34, they still have to block that 15 right there. So that's why whenever you do see Nightmare Doll players do this, if a good way to see if they're playing a little bit optimally or if they know their deck well is if they boost when they're supposed to, and if they don't boost when they're not supposed to get the maximum value out of their attacks. And then the other card we run is Pretender Dragon. He rarely comes up, but since we don't in our current G-Zone run any Workeroid strides, Chelsea cannot sometimes get rid of the Honolly because we really want to stride. So we use Pretender Dragon as a way to out the Honolly, as well as just an extra board wipe, counterblast 1, number of open rear guards, they retire that many units. If it's 3 or more, soul charge 5, draw a card. You do have to pitch the same cost as whatever your current Vanguard is, but you get a stride for free afterwards. This has not come up at all today. In testing, this came up like only once or twice, but when you do need it, it is very helpful. Last card of the attackers is Dust. This is your finisher. Counterblast 2, if they're at 4 damage or less, they take a damage, drive check supply, and all their abilities are wiped. They get down to grade 1, and also their power's at 1. So this is your finishing turn, but you don't go into this unless you have more than 2 counterblasts. I would say ideally you have 4 counterblasts, which isn't unreasonable if you have the Abigails and if you've been purposely soul charging or searching them off of Marissa to be able to countercharge. But minimum, you need to have at least 3 to go into this. And if they're at 4 damage, almost always good to do it because they're at 5, and then any attack kills. Even if they get a trigger, everything is still going to hit currently. And then let's say somehow you even do mess up, and this doesn't kill for some reason. Nightmare Dolls is just an insane deck on grade 3 anyway, so you don't get punished that hard for it aside from losing your Guardian Zone, which does hurt, but you still have 15 hit blocker from the heal trigger. So if you do misplay this, then it's not the end of the world, although you almost should never be misplaying that. If you do, then you miscounted what they had in hand or didn't pay attention to what they drew off the triggers.
But it's called End of the World.
Sometimes it isn't. They send you to dust, and then they reduce your own hand to dust, and you cry. So yeah, we're running Pale Moon G Guardians because we have to. None of them are super great. Dismal, he didn't come up at all today, but he prevents a rear guard from being attacked at all and gives it resist, which is very strong, and you can't do anything to respond to this. So sometimes you just do this if you need a core combo piece and you already used all of them somehow, or if you don't have another one in hand, then you can use this, protect it, and not worry about your next turn unless they do have Denial Griffin type of plays, so then you have to play around that. We run 2 of the Jester Demonic Dragon. You soul charge 1 and call a card from Soul to rear guard to block. This is honestly usually your best one if you want sheer value, because you know you'll always have a guaranteed 10k in the soul just from the V-Starter alone, assuming you did not soul blast that earlier. And you can sometimes get triggers off of this or PDs off of it that will save you otherwise. This is definitely probably the best G-Guardian here, although it's not anything great. Next one we run is the 1 Maja. It does have a Magi ability, but since none of our Vanguards run that, the important part is just that you soul charge 3, which is good for setting up your soul. And then we run the 1 what is this card? I haven't.
Furnival.
Furnival, yes. So you take a look at the top 3. You put 1 into Soul. If it's a grade 1 or higher, you get plus 5k. Another way to set up Soul, did not have to use this today at all, mainly because the attacks I was dealing with needed a high K block, and my Soul's already set up, but it's nice. This card kind of rarely comes up, really, just because you're Soul blasting so much with Alice to do your combos that sometimes you don't have.
Which card is this?
The 4 grade 3s. This is Coolard. So his effect is that if you're at GB1, you can choose a G Guardian to flip. So usually you call the extra Gesture Demonic Dragon as cost to flip, or maybe this if you already have your Soul set up. You get plus 15k if you have all 4 grades in your Soul. So you need grade 0, 1, 2, and 3, which is sometimes unlikely because you had to Soul Blast for the Alice combo. So I think that's about it for the deck list. The deck is very strong. I'd say the way to play it definitely depends on the matchup, but usually this deck is pretty combo, but also has elements of control. Generally, what you want to do is if you go first, your win percentage goes up like so much higher. I'd say like you have at least, depending on the deck you're fighting, it's like a 70%, 80% chance win rate, just because you have stride denial. And then if you do go second, you still have really strong strides that can speed run you to Xerox Dragon potentially. But yeah, usually you play reserved, you keep cards in hand, and then you just slowly build up your resources to where they can't kill you or you survive, and then you just rush them. That's actually why I think that the Carol turn, you actually don't usually want to do it unless you are going first. The reason why is because you don't get much card advantage. Like you cycle through your deck a lot, but you only get like a +1 to card advantage at the very end. If you are going second and you're striding, I honestly think you should go into Darkwood Princess because you get the +3 off of her from her drive check, and then you get a +2. I guess technically +1 because you get Yvette, card into Soul, and then you get an XL draw. So that's -1 +1. You can consider it a +2 if you think the Soul is that important of a second hand, and then you get a draw off of her trigger. So usually you want to do this just because you get the draw that you need for having combo pieces, but also because I think Carol is more effective where if you don't have the opportunity to stride, that's when you want to use Carol, because now it doesn't matter, you have to swing for game. So now you can just swing without having to worry about pitching stuff for stride. I think that's what makes Nightmare Doll strong, is saving resources and whittling them down with the strides if possible, and with your own little mini grade rush 3 turns if you go first. And then in the end game, if you have to block a lot to live and you have not much to really stride into, you can then just go into your grade 3 turns with Carol and have your rewrites and just do your Alice combos and still win the game off of that. I think that was what my winning image most likely was. It was just striding for the carded economy advantage, blocking with those new cards, and then having some of my remaining cards just to get that Carol turn off and not have to stride and kill them. So yeah, that was the deck list. I went 5-1 with it individually. Very fun deck, super strong. I am definitely excited to play in more Vanguard tournaments, hopefully in the future.
Excellent. So that was our excellent pilot of Nightmare Dolls, Fox. Thanks for sharing your deck profile on Nightmare Dolls. And as he indicated, he went 5-1 with this deck. Our overall record today was X in 3 and 6 rounds, so he definitely carried with him a large weight of our team. We're glad to have had him along today for an excellent tournament run. Thanks so much, and this is bluetea-TCG signing out. Thanks for watching. Please check out my latest videos as well. We're going to upload some footage that I took from the event, and hopefully those will be uploaded soon. But if you'd like to see more Vanguard videos, deck profiles, match videos, etc., please subscribe. Please consider leaving a like and a comment as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.